Alright, I've got a really exciting section for you. It's just kind of a mixture of problems that'll help you on the homework, and I've titled it Odds and Ends. It's a very creative title, I think. Here's the first problem I want to do. I want to solve this in the complex number system. That basically just means solve it, and if you have negative square roots when you get, or negatives inside the square root when you get done, imaginary answers, that's okay. So first thing I'm going to do is move everything over to one side, just like I always do. You know, just because it says solving complex number system, you're not doing anything different yet. So I move everything over to one side. Then it looks like I can factor out a 2x squared, and I get x squared plus 4 left. And then use the zero product property to split this up. I get 2x squared equals 0, and x squared plus 4 equals 0. Divide by 2 and square root, and here you get x equals 0. Subtract 4 and square root this. Here I get plus or minus. The negative under the square root is I, and square root of 4 is 2. So I have three answers, x equals 0, and x equals plus or minus 2i in the complex number system. You were worried about that for nothing. See, you were afraid, but you didn't have to be. But that's okay. The next problem that I want to do for you is an absolute value problem. And we'll do more of these later on, but I just want to start this for you. The way you do an absolute value problem is this. Whatever is under the absolute value, if you take the absolute value of this and you get 5, there are two things that do that. If you take absolute value of 5, you get 5. And if you take absolute value of negative 5, you get 5. So to solve a problem like this, basically you're going to say, well, either 3 minus 2x equals 5, or you could also say 3 minus 2x equals negative 5. And both of these solutions are valid, so you need to find them both. So here I would subtract 3. I get negative 2x equals negative 2, or equals 2. Oh, I said negative 2 there. So negative 2x equals 2, and then divide by negative 2, you get x equals 1. Okay, let me move the second one over just a little bit here, because it's kind of in the way, so we'll move that and work on this one now. So I subtract 3 again. I get negative 2x equals negative 8. Divide by negative 2, I get x equals 4. So these are my two solutions to this absolute value equation, and it's pretty cool. Okay, the next problem I'm going to do, I have x to the 4th minus 2x squared minus 15. I'm going to factor this the same way that I would factor a quadratic, with nothing in front of the x squared. The only difference is I have to put an x squared here and here to get my x to the 4th, but I still need to look for two things that multiply to give the last term and add to give the middle. So how about negative 5 and positive 3? Does that work? Let's see. Negative 5 times positive 3, that gives me negative 15. And then if we look at the middle terms, I have a negative 5x, positive 3x, I guess, well, squared I should say. And I guess that does give me negative 2x squared. Now I'll split this up, just like I do a quadratic. And here I have an extra step. I have to solve x squared plus 3 equals 0. So I will subtract 3. And I'll get x squared equals negative 3. And I square root that. And you get x equal plus or minus negative root 3. And if we're solving this in the complex plane, then we will write this as plus or minus I and a root 3. We take the negative inside and make it an I. Now, if they don't tell us to use complex plane, then we would just ignore this solution and just find the real solutions. And here is my real solution, or I should say my real solutions. I add 5. I get x squared equals 5. And once again, I square root. And anytime you square root, you write plus or minus. And those are my answers. Okay, the last problem I want to do for you, It's kind of a cute problem. It looks a little intimidating, but don't you let that worry you. Let's just start on the inside. And when we see two parentheses like this, it suggests to me that we're going to FOIL. So let's just FOIL and see what happens. So first, outer, inner, and then last. So you'll have a similar homework problem where they ask you to simplify. And actually, I see an error here. Oh, this should be I squared. I wondered why I had too many i's in there. Okay, now the 12i and the negative 12i cancel. And I get 9i squared. Well, 9i squared, I squared is negative 1, so I get negative 9 minus 16. And that gives me square root, let's see, negative 9 minus 16, I guess that's going to be negative 25. And then square root of 25 is just 5, and the square root of the negative is I. So I can simplify all this and write 5i. And that's pretty exciting.